They look a little funky. Isosceles trapezoids are very nice. They are your besties. They're your best friends because they have congruent sides. So let's talk about this guy first. So properties of non-isosceles trapezoids. So if it looks a little weird, you can obviously tell this side is shorter than this side. Only one pair of opposite sides is parallel. So all the shapes that we've done so far were made of two parallel sides. So we have this one, and we'd have this one. We'd have a rectangle, this one, and this one, a square, same thing, this one, and this one. This only has one set of parallel sides. That's what the little arrows mean. The arrows mean that they are parallel. Consecutive angles are supplementary. So for this part, you probably don't know what this means. I'm probably speaking gibberish to you. Consecutive angles means same side angles. Supplementary is a fancy word that we learned in the beginning of the year. It means that it adds to make 180. Remember the S turns into an 8, so this is like 180. Consecutive means same side angles. So when we did other shapes, we could cover up any side of it, and half of it should make 180. For trapezoids, only certain sides work. So in this first trapezoid, I want you to put 1, 2, 3, and 4 inside the angles of the trapezoid. When you are looking at consecutive angles, you have to kind of think about lining up your finger with the two arrows that are on your trapezoid. If I put my finger on the little arrows, the angles that are showing like 2 and 3 are supplementary. 2 and 3 are supplementary, meaning they add to make 180. If I go on the other side of my finger, 1 and 4 would be supplementary. So 1 and 4, those also are supplementary. I could not put my finger on one of the arrows like this. 3 and 4 are not supplementary. If you look, 4 almost looks like it's a 90-degree angle. 3 is acute. Those are not going to be supplementary. So the only ones I would line up your finger on to the arrows, these two add to make 180. These two add to make 180. Okay. Isosceles trapezoid, these are your besties. These are fun. These are nice. So they have two non-parallel sides, which are these, meaning that these sides are congruent. They are the same length. Okay. So if this was 10, this would also be 10 automatically. The diagonals are congruent. So if I knew this diagonal was 12, I could say that the other diagonal is automatically 12. So the diagonals are congruent. They do not bisect each other, but they are congruent in length. The base angles are congruent. So same thing. I want to put, I'm going to put a little arc mark down here. Boop, 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 boop. The base angles are congruent because just like an isosceles triangle, the base angles are congruent. When the base angles are congruent, also the top angles are going to be congruent to each other. So I'm going to put 2 arcs at the top and 1 arc at the bottom because they're not all congruent to each other, but the top match each other, the bottom match each other. And then opposite angles are supplementary. We're going to put same thing like 1, 2, 3, and 4 in our trapezoid. The same rule as applies to the other one. If I cover up half of it, 2 and 3 add to make 180. 1 and 4 add to make 180. And then also because it's isosceles, they're saying opposite angles are also supplementary. So like 1 and 3 equal to 180. So I could jump across and add to make 180. That's only for isosceles. And then 2 and 4 add to make 180. So you could do consecutive, same side, like 2 and 3, 1 and 4. You could also jump across 1 and 3, add to make 180, 2 and 4, add to make 180. So let's do a couple problems together. Let's jump to number 2. Number 2 gives you 2 numbers. This is not an isosceles trapezoid because it does not say it's isosceles. It also does not say that the sides here and here are congruent. So those are not isosceles. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to use my trick. If I put my finger on my little arrows, B and C, this side need to add to make 180. So 31 plus something. Thank you. Now let me get you a piece of paper. Angle B and angle C need to add to make 180. So 31 plus something needs to make 180. What would that have to be? Somebody with a calculator. You subtract 31 from 180. What do you get? $149. So this is going to be 149 degrees. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. The other side adds to make 180 if I put my fingers on my little parallel lines. Now I'm looking at A and D. So 62 plus something needs to add to make 180. What is that going to be? What is 180 minus 62? $118. So 118 goes here. Boop. That's it. Using that same kind of knowledge, let's go down to the one directly below it, number 4. So number 4 says that I have to find the measure of angle R, so I'm gonna have to plug it back into angle R. This is not an isosceles trapezoid because the sides are not congruent, but I do have my 2 parallel lines. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put my finger right on top of my little line, my arrows, so my arrows line up. This side together needs to add to make 180 together. So what am I going to do if they need to add to make 180? Add them. So I'm going to take 12x plus 3. I'm going to add 7x minus 13. And I'm going to equal it to 180 because they're on the same side together. If they're on the same side, they add to make 180. So now I can combine like terms like we've been doing. So I'm going to start with my x's. 12x and 7x combine together to make 19x. And then I have 3 minus 13. That's not going to make 16. Negative 10. Good. Equals 180. And now it's a 2-step equation like they've all been coming to. So I'm going to add 10 and then I'm going to divide. So 180 plus 10 makes 190. And then I'm going to divide by 19 to both sides. So x is 10. I need to find the measure of angle R on your EOC. This is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to plug it back in. So I'm going to take 10 and I'm going to plug it into R. R says 7x minus 13. You don't have to really show work for this. You could plug it into a calculator and be done with it. But it's 7 times 10 minus 13, which is 70 minus 13. So you should get 57 degrees. So those two are non-isosceles trapezoids. Normally, when you're going to get a trapezoid, you're going to have an isosceles trapezoid. So let's do an isosceles trapezoid problem. Let's go to number 5. Number 5 is easy peasy, but people think it's too easy, so they want to put numbers. So number 5 says that DEFG is an isosceles trapezoid. I need to find what DG is congruent to. So from D to G is here. What segment is going to be congruent to D to G? D to G is going to be congruent to what? EF. Thanks, Logan. My honors kids were like putting numbers. So I was like, what in the world? DF is talking about a length. D to F is the diagonal. So from D to F, that's going to be congruent to the other diagonal, because whenever you have an isosceles trapezoid, and this says it's isosceles, if DF is one number, then EG is also going to be the same number. So whenever they're just looking for numbers, or like they have like a congruency statement, like number 6, you are just writing like the matching part to it. Let's do a math one. Let's go to the back to the isosceles trapezoid ones. So isosceles trapezoids are nice. These are usually ones that you will see on your EOC. So on the back, let's jump to number, I picked out certain problems I wanted to do. Let's go to 12. Okay, question 12 on the back says, if WXYZ is an isosceles trapezoid, find each missing angle. So even though all of these questions have 4 missing angles, 2 are going to be the same and 2 are going to be the same because isosceles have top angles that are congruent and bottom angles that are congruent. So for number 12, 10x plus 5 is the same as the other top angle. So if this is 10x plus 5, I can also put 10x plus 5 right here. I could also technically move the y, 6x minus 1, over here. You don't need to, but I'll just put it over there just so you know, 6x minus 1. You could add all of these together to make 360, but that's going to be a lot of math. Instead, I can use my little finger trick, and I can cover up half of it, lining up my little arrows, and then one side should add to make 180. So I'm going to add these to make 180, kind of like we just did. If it's an isosceles trapezoid, opposite angles are going to add to make 180. The reason why is because I can take this and I can move it over here and use that finger trick. So I'm going to add to make 180. So I could say 10x plus 5 plus 6x minus 1 equals 180, because they're on the same side together. Yes. Yes. Take the path. I think it's over there. I don't see it, but it's probably on top of the rainbow card. So I'm going to add my x's together like we just did. 10x and 6x make 16x. And then I'm going to add my 5 minus 1. 5 and 1 do not make 6 because it says minus. So 5 minus 1 is 4. And then two-step equation, I'm going to minus 4 and divide. So 16x equals 176. If I divide by 16 to both sides, 76 divided by 16, x equals 11. And this is where you could take 11 and plug it back into every single angle, which is fine. But I know the angles are going to match. So realistically, I only need to plug it into one of the top ones and one of the bottom ones, because whatever the top is going to be, it's going to match the other top. Whatever the bottom is going to be, it's going to match the other bottom. So if I take 11 and I plug it back in, 10 times 11 plus 5, 10 times 11 plus 5. So this angle's 115 degrees. If that's 115 degrees, x is also going to be 115 degrees. And then 6 times 11 minus 1. What's it? 65. So down here is 65 degrees. This one's also 65 degrees because the top angles are congruent and the bottom angles are congruent. So I'm going to fill in all these little spaces. So W is 115. X is 115. Y is 65. And the last one, Z is 65. So whenever you're filling these in on the backside, 2 of them are going to match. So you really only have 2 answers because you could just move those answers around. We're going to do one more problem together. Number 13 says CDEF is an isosceles triangle. We're going to find each angle. So they're both at the top. So what do I know about the top angles? They're equal to each other. So since this is an isosceles trapezoid, both of these angles are congruent to each other. So I'm not going to add to make 180 because if I look, they're both obtuse. 2 obtuse angles will not make 180. It'll be bigger than 180. So I'm going to equal them to each other because they're both congruent to each other. So I'm going to put an equal sign between them. So 21x minus 16 equals 18x plus 5. And then I'm going to add 16 to both sides. Because remember, opposite operations, it says minus. So I'm going to add. So 5 plus 16 is 21. Now I'm going to move my x to the other side. So it's positive 18. So I'm going to subtract 18 to both sides. And then I have to divide. Okay, so x is 7, but I have to plug it back in. I know the top two are going to be equal to each other, C and D, so I really only need to plug it into 1. So if I plug 7 in, I have 18 times 7 plus 5. So C and D are both going to be, good morning. Happy Monday. Okay. There you go. I know. I woke up this morning and I was like, is it Friday yet? Okay, so this is 131 and this is also 131. So if both of those are 131 because they're both top angles, they're both congruent, how can I find the base angles? Same side angles add to make 180. So I could do that trick where I cover up, if I have my finger, 131 plus something needs to add to make 180 because they are on the same side of the shape. So I just take 180 and I'm going to subtract 131 and that's going to give me what adds with 131. Oh, what's this? What? How is it a funny number? 49. What? Okay, anyways. So because these sides add to make 180, I use subtraction, and that means 49 is also over here. So I'm going to fill in it over here. So C is 131, D is 131 degrees, E is 49 degrees, F is 49 degrees. So the trapezoids are not nearly as bad as